The desert doesn't forgive mistakes. I learned that the hard way after my horse stumbled into a ravine, breaking its leg and leaving me stranded 60 miles from the nearest fort with nothing but my canteen, my rifle, and a profound sense of my own stupidity. My name is Elias Holt, former Army scout, current nobody trying to carve a path to California that didn't involve crowded wagon trains. For 3 days, I'd been walking, my mouth full of sand, my hope dwindling. On the 4th morning, the sound of gunshots echoed through the canyon wall, not the crisp report of army rifles, but the heavier boom of buffalo guns. Then, closer, the sharper cracks of revolvers. Crouching behind a sandstone slab, I saw the scene unfold in the dry wash below. 3 rough-looking men in dirty trail clothes had a wagon circled. A freight outfit by the look of it, but they weren't after the cargo. They were firing at a single, desperate figure on horseback, a rider who was returning fire with a small pistol. As the rider's horse reared, I caught a glimpse of long, dark hair and a flash of beaded deerskin. An Apache woman. One of the men, a bulky fellow with a greasy beard, let out a whoop. "S'mon now, darlin'. We ain't gonna hurt ya, just wanna talk." The cruelty in his laugh made my skin crawl. This wasn't a fight, it was a hunt. I should have kept walking. My own survival was hanging by a thread. Getting involved was a death sentence. But the sight of that one figure against the 3, the sheer ugly injustice of it, rooted me to the spot. My Army-issue Springfield rifle was in my hands before I'd consciously decided. I found a rest on the rock, took a breath that burned my dry throat and center. The sights on the man closest to the woman, the one aiming a rifle at her horse. The shot cracked across the canyon, startling even me. The man dropped. The other 2 whirled, confused, searching the rocks. The Apache woman didn't hesitate. She spurred her horse toward the nearest cover, a cluster of boulders at the base of my perch. One of the remaining men fired at her, but his shot went wide. I worked the rifle's lever, fired again. This shot kicked up dirt at the second man's feet. They were spooked now, uncertain of the number of enemies in the rocks. Apache. One yelled, "It's a damn ambush." They scrambled for their own horses, dragging their wounded companion, and in moments they were galloping back down the wash the way they'd come, leaving a cloud of dust and the abandoned wagon. Silence rushed back in, heavy and profound. I stayed in, watching until I was sure they weren't circling back. Then slowly I stood. She was there. 20 feet below me, her horse calmed, her pistol now aimed squarely at my chest. Her face was a mask of fierce pride and sharp intelligence, framed by black hair that fell like a waterfall over her shoulders. Her eyes, dark as obsidian, held no gratitude, only a deep, penetrating assessment. "I'm not going to hurt you," I said, my voice a dry croak. I slowly laid my rifle on the rock and raised my empty hands. She said nothing, her gaze flicking from my face to my gun to the retreating dust cloud. Finally, after a minute that felt like an hour, she lowered her pistol. She spoke a few words in Apache, her tone commanding, though I didn't understand them. "I don't speak your language," I said, beginning to pick my way down the slope. "My name's Elias. I was just passing through." As I reached the wash floor, I saw what I hadn't from above, a dark, wet stain on the left side of her deerskin dress, just above her waist. She was wounded. She followed my gaze, her expression unwavering, but a slight tremor in her hand as she dismounted betrayed her pain. "You're shot," I stated. She nodded once, a sharp, conceding motion. Then she pointed at me, then at the canyon rim from where I'd fired. "You shoot, you help." Her English was heavily accented but clear. "Yes, now let me help you more. That wound needs tending, or you'll bleed out before you find your people." I approached slowly, as one would a wild animal. She watched me, every muscle tense, but she didn't stop me as I gently lifted the edge of the leather. The bullet had grazed her, a deep furrow along her ribs. It was bleeding steadily but wasn't fatal. not if treated. Using water from my canteen, precious water, and a strip torn from my own shirt, I cleaned and bound the wound as best I could. She endured the process in stoic silence, her eyes never leaving my face. When I was done, she stood, testing her movement. She pointed to the wagon. Among the scattered freight were sacks of flour, tools, and, blessedly, a small barrel of water. She drank deeply, then handed it to me. It was the most delicious thing I'd ever tasted. I must go, I said, refilling my canteen. My horse is dead. I am trying to get to the Butterfield Trail. I gestured westward. She mounted her horse in one fluid motion, despite her injury. She looked down at me, then shook her head. No, you come. It wasn't a request. I can't come with you. My path is that way. She nudged her horse closer, blocking my intended direction. Her face was set with an implacable will. You save me. Dead is life. You come. My people decide. She pointed firmly east, back into the heart of Apache territory. You come now. I argued. I pleaded. I explained about California, about being a white man where I clearly wasn't wanted. She listened, but her resolve didn't flicker. When I finally shouldered my pack and took a step west, she calmly raised her pistol again, not with malice, but with the certainty of a person stating a simple fact. I was not allowed to leave, exhausted, wounded in spirit if not body, and realizing that in this vast emptiness, she held all the cards, the horse, the knowledge, the water. I surrendered. With a sigh that came from the depths of my soul, I turned and walked east, her horse pacing me. I had saved an Apache beauty, and now, for reasons I couldn't fathom, she wouldn't let me leave. For 2 days, we traveled. She rode, I walked. She was called Liwan, which meant the sound of the wind, a name she offered on the second morning after a long silence. Speaking seemed to be a commodity she spent sparingly. She shared water and a little pemmican from a pouch on her saddle, but no conversation. Her wound, thanks to my rudimentary field dressing and her own toughness, was healing cleanly. My own feet were not faring as well. I was a prisoner, but a curiously respected one. She never bound me, but her awareness was a tangible chain. At night, she would indicate where I should sleep, always across the small fire from her pistol and my rifle, both within her reach. I considered trying to slip away in the dark, but the desert at night was a labyrinth of unseen dangers, and I had no supplies. More than that, a stubborn curiosity had begun to gnaw at me. Who was she? Why was a lone Apache woman with a freight wagon? And what did she mean, my people decide? On the afternoon of the third day, we crested a rise and I saw the camp. It was nestled in a high, hidden valley, a scattering of wickiups near a slender creek. Smoke curled into the clear sky. As we approached, figures emerged, still and watching. The air grew thick with silent scrutiny. I felt every eye upon me, a white man being led in by Liwan. We entered the circle of dwelling. An older man, his face a map of deep lines and quiet authority, stepped forward. He was Chief Nantan, as I would learn. Liwan spoke to him rapidly in Apache, gesturing to her bandaged side, then to me. She told the story of the ambush, my intervention, my medical aid. The chief's eyes, as dark and discerning as Liwan's, studied me. He asked a short, sharp question. Liwan's answer was firm. She pointed at me, then at the ground at her feet. He stays. A younger warrior, muscles coiled like springs, stepped forward. His name was Koa, and his glare was pure venom. He spoke angrily, gesturing toward the horizon, then at me. I didn't need a translator to understand. He is white. He is enemy. He should not be here. A debate ensued, voices rising and falling. Liwan stood her ground, her voice never rising but cutting through the others with the sharpness of a knife. Finally, Chief Nantan raised a hand for silence. He looked at me, then at Liwan, and spoke a sentence. Liwan turned to me. You saved the life of the people. This creates a debt. You will stay. You will live as we live. We will see the man you are. It was not an invitation, it was a verdict. Koa spat on the ground near my boots and stalked away. So began my new life. I was given a small, empty wickiup at the edge of the camp. My rifle was returned to me, a gesture that surprised me, but I understood it was also a test. Loan, by some unspoken decree, became my guardian, for lack of a better word. She taught me the basic words for water, food, fire, and danger. She showed me how to grind corn, how to strip and cure juniper bark for cordage. I was put to work hauling water and gathering firewood under the watchful, often hostile, eyes of the men. Koa was my constant adversary. During a spear-throwing practice, he accidentally sent a shaft whistling past my head. During a hunt for rabbits, he tried to lead me into a patch of cholla cactus. Each time, Lewin would appear, as if sensing the trouble. A few sharp words from her would send Koa away seething. I began to understand her status was unusual. She was unmarried, outspoken, and moved with the confidence of a warrior, not just a woman of the camp. I learned her father had been a respected war leader, killed in a skirmish with cavalry. She had no brothers and thus had taken on many roles herself, including, it seemed, the risky task of scouting for stray opportunities with the freight wagon, a fact that still baffled the more traditional members of the band. One evening, as I sat by the creek trying to mend a torn moccasin she'd given me, she sat beside me. "Why, you help?" she asked abruptly, the firelight dancing on her features. "You could have walked. You were dying yourself." I thought about it. Those men, what they were doing was wrong. It wasn't a fair fight. She nodded slowly, as if this was an answer she'd been testing. "Koa says you did it because you want me as a trophy." The bluntness of it startled me. I looked at her, truly looked. She was beautiful, fiercely so, but it was a beauty that felt like staring at a lightning storm, awe-inspiring and dangerous. "No," I said, and found I meant it. "I did it because you were one, and they were three. That's all." She held my gaze for a long moment, then looked back at the fire. "That is a better reason," she said softly. A week later, disaster struck. A group of children, including the chief's young grandson, were playing near the creek, when a flash flood, born from a distant thunderstorm, roared down the canyon. The camp erupted in chaos. I saw the boy swept into the churning, muddy water. Without thinking, I dropped everything and dove in after him. The current was brutal, filled with debris. I managed to grab the child, fighting to keep both our heads above water, until strong hands from the bank pulled us out. Coughing up muddy water, I lay on the bank as the boy was rushed to his mother. Chief Nantan stood over me. He didn't speak, but his eyes, for the first time, held something other than assessment. It looked like respect. Later that night, Lewin brought me a bowl of stew. "You saved 2 lives of the people now," she said. Her tone was different. The hard edge of obligation was gone, replaced by something warmer, more curious. But the peace was shattered the next morning. Scouts rode in, their news sending a wave of tension through the camp. A column of U.S. cavalry had been spotted, heading toward the valley. They were led, the scouts said, by a lieutenant known for his brutality, man who didn't bother distinguishing between hostile and peaceful bands. Panic simmered. The council met urgently. Koa's voice was loudest. "We fight. We show them our strength." But Chief Nantan was wiser. "To fight is to die. They have many soldiers, many guns. We must leave this place now, go deeper into the mountains." As plans were made for a swift evacuation, Lewin found me. Her face was grim. "You must go to them," she said. My heart lurched. After all this, was I being cast out? "Sent to the cavalry?" "You must go," she repeated, "and tell them we are not the band they hunt. Tell them we are peaceful. Tell them to turn away." She saw the doubt in my eyes. "You are a white man. They will listen to you. It is the only way to save my people without blood." She was asking me to walk into a cavalry camp, a former scout turned Apache sympathizer, and persuade an aggressive lieutenant to change course. It was a suicide mission, but as I looked at her at the camp full of people who were no longer just abstract savages to me, the old woman who shared her herbs, the children who laughed at my clumsy Apache, the chief who valued his people's lives above pride, I knew I had to try. I'll do it, I said. She stepped close, her hand touching my arm, a gesture she had never made before. You come back, she ordered, her eyes blazing. You do this, and then you come back. It wasn't a request about debt or obligation. It was something else entirely. I nodded, a promise I wasn't sure I could keep. As I mounted the horse they gave me, I looked back. Leon stood straight and tall, watching me go, her expression a mixture of fear, hope, and that iron will. She had finally given me permission to leave. But now, for the first time, I was the one who wasn't sure I wanted to. Riding toward the cavalry was like walking into the jaws of a wolf. I could see the dust cloud long before I saw the blue coats, a stain on the horizon moving inexorably toward the hidden valley. I carried a strip of white cloth torn from an old shirt, tied to the barrel of my Springfield, and my heart hammered against my ribs. I was no diplomat. I was a man caught between two worlds, about to plead for the one I'd just begun to understand. The lead scouts spotted me first. 2 cavalrymen peeled off from the column, carbines at the ready, and intercepted me in a cloud of dust. Hold there. Identify yourself. Elias Holt, former scout out of Fort Buchanan, I shouted, keeping my hands visible. I need to speak with your commanding officer. It's urgent. They escorted me, under wary guard, to the lieutenant at the head of the column. He was young, with a crisp uniform and a face that hadn't yet been softened by wisdom or hardship, only hardened by ambition. Lieutenant Thorne. I knew his type immediately. A white man, coming from Apache land, Thorne said, his voice dripping with condescension. Deserter? Traitor? Or have you gone full renegade, Holt? Neither, sir. I'm here to tell you that the band in the valley ahead is not the one you're hunting. They're peaceful. They want no trouble. If you turn your column south, you'll avoid a fight that doesn't need to happen. He laughed, a short, barking sound. Peaceful Apaches? That's a new one. My orders are to clear this territory of hostiles. A band is a band. They're all the same. They're not, Lieutenant. This band hasn't raided. The chief is a man named Nantan. He's evacuating his people deeper into the mountains right now to avoid you. Attacking them would be a massacre, not a battle. It would be wrong. His eyes narrowed. Wrong? You're giving me moral lectures from the back of an Apache pony? How do you know so much about their intentions, Holt? Have you been living with them? The accusation hung in the air. The soldiers around me shifted uncomfortably. I took a breath, knowing my next words would seal my fate with the white world. Yes, sir, I have. I was taken in after I helped one of theirs. They've shown me hospitality. I'm telling you, as a former scout, and a man who has seen both sides of this, if you ride into that valley, you will be killing women and children who want only to be left alone. Is that the victory you want to write home about? Anger flushed his cheeks. You are a sympathizer and a traitor. I should have you hanged from the nearest tree. He leaned forward in his saddle. But you've given me valuable intelligence. They're evacuating? That means they're vulnerable on the trail. We'll cut them off. He turned to his sergeant. Prepare to ride hard. We'll intercept them in the narrow pass south of the valley. Horror washed over me. In trying to save them, I had given away their plan. I had made things infinitely worse. Without thinking, I yanked on my horse's reins, spinning it around. No, you can't. Seize him, Thorne yelled. I dug my heels into the horse's flanks. The same tough little Mustang the Apache had given me. It shot forward like an arrow, back the way we had come. Shots rang out, bullets whizzing past my head. I crouched low, urging the horse into a desperate, flat-out gallop. I had to warn them. I had to get back before Thorne's cavalry could flank the slower-moving band with their children and elders. The ride was a blur of terror and determination. My horse, sure-footed and bred for this land, outdistanced the heavier cavalry mounts. I pushed it mercilessly, praying it wouldn't stumble. As I neared the valley, I saw the tail end of the band, a line of people and horses snaking into the high, rocky pass, Lewin's Pass. I rode straight for Chief Nantan, who was at the rear, overseeing the retreat. "They know," I gasped, pulling the lathered horse to a stop. "The cavalry officer, he's cutting you off. He plans to ambush you in the narrow part of the pass." Nantan's face turned to granite. He barked orders. Warriors rushed forward. The line halted. Panic threatened. But the chief's calm authority held. He looked at me, then at the direction from which I'd come. "How much time?" "An hour, maybe less." They were riding hard. He made a decision instantly. "We do not go into the trap. We turn it into ours." He pointed to a side canyon, steeper but defensible. "There, we make our stand there. They will have to come to us on our ground." It was a risk. They would be cornered, but it was better than being slaughtered in a gully. The band moved with practiced efficiency, scrambling up the rocky slope into the new position. I dismounted, my rifle in hand. Lewin appeared at my side, her own rifle ready. "You came back," she said. There was no surprise in her voice, only a fierce satisfaction. "I led them to you," I said, the guilt corrosive. "You came back to warn us," she corrected. "That is what matters. Now you fight with us." I looked at the people preparing boulders for rolling, finding firing positions, protecting the children in a high cave. These were not faceless hostiles. This was the old woman who made the best corn cakes, the boy I'd pulled from the flood, the fierce, proud woman beside me. "This was my place now. A fight with you," I said. When Lieutenant Thorne's cavalry arrived at the mouth of the side canyon, they found not a fleeing, vulnerable column, but a fortified position on the high ground. The first volley of rifle fire from the Apache, augmented by my Springfield, knocked 2 soldiers from their saddles and sent the rest scrambling for cover. The fight was brutal and short. The cavalry, expecting an easy pursuit, was not prepared for an ambush. Their horses were exposed in the tight space. After 20 minutes of futile, costly attempts to advance up the slope, Thorne, his uniform torn, called a retreat. They fell back, dragging their wounded, leaving the canyon in a silence broken only by the moans of horses and the sigh of the wind. We had won. We had saved the band. That night in the council, Chief Nantan spoke. He talked of the day's events, of my warning, of my fight. He then turned to me. "A man is not the color of his skin, but the courage of his heart, and the truth of his action. You have twice saved lives of the people. You have fought for the people. You are no longer Inda, White Eye. You are Shikis, my friend. You have a place here for as long as you wish it." The formal acceptance washed over me, a wave of relief and belonging. Later by the fire, Lewin sat beside me. The hard will in her eyes had softened into something warmer, something that made my breath catch. "You are staying," she said. It was not a question this time. "I am staying," I confirmed. The dream of California was ashes. The desert had forgiven my mistakes and given me a purpose. She smiled then, a rare and beautiful sight. "Good, because I would not have let you leave again." This time, her words held no threat of a pistol, only a promise of a future. I had saved an Apache beauty, and in doing so, she had saved me from a lonely path, from my own prejudices, and from a life without meaning. She wouldn't let me leave because at last I had no desire to go. The wind, Lewin, had carried me home.